Today is Friday, 9th of February 2018, and this is the Midnight News on CNN.
World financial markets are on a downhill run of their own. The Dow fell more than 1,000 points on Thursday, down more than 4%. It's the second 1,000-point drop this week. Markets in Asia are following Wall Street's lead. You can see the red arrows across the board, everything pointing downwards, and big losses, steep losses there across the board in Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Sydney. CNN's Richard Quest explains what's driving this downward trend.
What it means is that the Dow and the S&P have now fallen more than 10% since their recent highs. That, we can pretty much say, defines a correction. What we don't know, of course, is what happens next. But we can draw some strands. We're not totally helpless here. We know the reasons why this is happening. Bond yields edging up towards 3%. Worries about inflation. Concerns about debt and deficits. Raising up interest rates even more. So, Wolf, the key message from today, as I think you and I have spoken earlier in the week, this isn't over yet. The market is going to continue to test where it believes true fair value lies, and that's on the downside.
And Richard Quest there. Well, the US government has officially run out of funding, and the second government shutdown of the Trump administration has begun. The Senate is still debating a two-year budget bill that has broad support, but the vote is being held up by Republican Rand Paul, who is concerned about the bill's impact on the federal deficit.
Reserving the right to object. The reason I'm here tonight is to put people on the spot. I want people to feel uncomfortable. I want them to have to answer people at home who said, how come you were against President Obama's deficits, and then how come you're for Republican deficits? Isn't that the very definition of intellectual dishonesty? If you were against President Obama's deficits and now you're for the Republican deficits, isn't that the very definition of hypocrisy?
Well, let's bring in CNN congressional correspondent Phil Matney. Phil, I know you've had a very long day and many more hours ahead for you. But let me ask you, what on earth is happening where you are?
That's a great question. I think we've all been asking ourselves that over the course of the last couple hours. Look, you need to really split what's going on right now into kind of two issues and, frankly, two chambers, the two chambers of Congress. You have the U.S. Senate. You just heard from Senator Rand Paul. What he's wanted throughout the day and why this has taken so long in the United States Senate is he wants an amendment vote to essentially undo the deal that was crafted by the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, top Republican, and the top Democrat, Senator Chuck Schumer. What those leaders have said is we're not going to give you that amendment vote because if we allow that, then there's going to be other members who will come out of the woodwork. They're going to want changes too. And basically this whole $300 billion deal will completely fall apart. Because of that, Senator Paul has been able to basically elongate this process until about 1 a.m. That's when we're going to see the first vote, an hour after the government actually shuts down. By the time that gets done, probably about an hour later, the Senate will have the final vote. Now look at the second issue here, and that's the House. And that's the issue that this morning we were all looking at as being the biggest potential problem. House Democrats have made clear from the very beginning they want a firm commitment that the immigration issue, the deferred action program that the president put it into, March 5th would be the end date, has to be addressed on the House floor. Speaker Paul Ryan, the Republican, has said, look, I'm happy to deal with this, but I'm only going to deal with it if the president supports the proposal. That's not good enough for House Democrats. Speaker Paul Ryan needs House Democrats to get this across the finish line, and therein lies the problem. The big question right now that we're all trying to figure out, we know what's going to happen in the Senate, it's just a matter of time. It's, are the House Democratic votes there to get this across the finish line? And I can tell you from aides that I'm talking to, no one's quite sure yet.
Yeah, and give us some sense on the House side, what we're hearing from Nancy Pelosi, of course, Minority Leader. It's my understanding that she's not trying to whip the vote. She's not trying to get people not to vote for it. She's asking them just to hold their decision close to their chest, as it were.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, it's been a bit of a delicate balance throughout the day for Democratic leaders. Their caucus, the people that are in their party in the House is in a much different place than, say, the Democratic caucus over on the Senate side. The House Democrats, basically, if you want to kind of track down through where they are, their leadership needs to be to know on this. But they're not behind the scenes twisting arms, if you will, basically saying if you don't vote against this, we're going to punish you with a committee assignment or take away fundraising money or something like that. So it's not like a hard whip, which means members have the opportunity to vote yes. I will tell you, behind the scenes, I've been told Leader Nancy Pelosi has made clear she wants this to pass. Keep in mind, this is a deal that has major increases in non-defense domestic spending that Democrats have been seeking for years. Leader Pelosi's staff was integral in actually crafting this deal. So they want the votes to actually get there, but they don't want the public specter of that actually occurring. So as you can see, it's a bit of an odd dynamic right now that's what's been going on. And so that's why you have this uncertainty right now. We should know probably in about 4 or 5 hours where they actually end up. But the idea that we're getting to this point, and this is actually going to get to the House floor without everybody knowing where the votes is, that's A, rare, and B, pretty risky.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. As you talk about Leader Pelosi's position that she wants this to pass because a number of the Democratic priorities are met in this budget deal. How much rancor is there in the Democratic caucus, the fact that, you know, this is the position that Leader Pelosi is taking, given what we were going through just a couple of weeks ago over DACA and Democrats saying this was their moment to get a deal on immigration for the Dreamers?
Yeah, look, that's the crux of the issue right now. There is significant, almost anger, maybe depending on which Democrats you talk to, outrage at the fact that this hasn't been addressed before, that the fact they haven't been able to find an avenue or a pathway to get this addressed in a way that they feel like doesn't put the thumb on the scale towards one plan or the other. The fact that this issue is even out there right now when 70-80% of the country approves of the idea of the so-called Dreamers getting pathways to citizenship, there's extreme frustration in that. And frankly, that comes with being the minority party. You don't have a lot of leverage, particularly in the U.S. House, to make things happen. That's why they seize on moments like this, because they know Speaker Paul Ryan needs Democratic votes. If he needs Democratic votes, Democrats can try and extract a promise here. I think the frustration is they feel like they were undercut by their Senate colleagues. They feel like they were kind of left behind by them. And because of that, they're in a bit of a less of a situation right now than they would want to be. That's why you've seen the frustration throughout the course of the day. And frankly, that's exactly why you've seen the uncertainty about where their votes are actually going to be.
Well, Phil Mattingly, I hope you have a lot of coffee by your side. And we will be with you in the hours ahead. Phil Mattingly, we very much appreciate it. There on Capitol Hill. Thank you. Well, Michael Genovese is a political analyst and president of the Global Policy Institute at Loyola Marymount University, and Jessica Levinson is a professor of law and governance at Loyola Law School. They are partners in academia, if you will. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. Michael, to start with you, how surprised are you that we're here at this position, a second government shutdown, because of Rand Paul?
Well, Rand Paul's always been a bit of a gadfly and an outsider. He likes being the outlier. The problem is he's shutting down the government on his own. But being Don Quixote tilting at windmills means that he's basically saying to everyone else, you play by my rules or we don't play. He's going to have to give in at some point fairly soon. He has traditionally been a budget hawk. He wants to keep the budget deficit down, cut it. But ironically, he was talking in your clip about hypocrisy. He also voted for the Trump tax cut, which is going to add dramatically to the budget deficit. So you don't expect perfect consistency from politicians, but there are some times when your votes really do look not like hypocrisy necessarily, but certainly paradoxical.
Yeah, and Jessica, to that point, the hypocrisy, the paradox that Rand Paul is holding things up in the Senate, at least temporarily, after he voted for tax cuts that added a whopping amount to the deficit, some 1.5 trillion by some estimates.
Well, yes, and I mean, let's be honest, Rand Paul is throwing his weight around. I mean, we're all talking about him, and we just used his name how many times on international television, and I think, look, that's part of the point. He's up there, and he's literally saying, you're going to have to listen to me.